What's going on, everybody? John here with Mock Motorsport, and in today's video we are going to talk about the 5 things that I dislike about my Bronco. That's right, 5 things that I think not necessarily deal breakers, but are definitely things I would like to change or would like to find fixes for. So that being said, I want to preface this by saying that I have a 2021 Ford Bronco Outer Banks Edition. All right. So let's get right into it. Number 5, I would say the 5th thing that kind of annoys or irritates me about the vehicle is going to be the windshield. Why, you may ask? Well, much like a Jeep, the windshield is practically vertical. This basically means that you're more likely to get stone chips. Now, I put a great deal of mileage on my Bronco. As a matter of fact, I've had this for about 4 months or 3.5 months approximately, and I've put on almost 12,000 kilometers. So I do a lot of time behind the wheel of this vehicle, and as a result of that, I spend a lot of that on the highway. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks after taking delivery of this vehicle, wouldn't you know it, bang, massive stone hits the windshield, immediately putting a massive chip in it, almost like a crater, really. And I went to a glass shop that day. They tried repairing it, and even to the best of their ability, they said it's a 50-50 shot that the repair was actually going to stick. And a couple of weeks later, it progressively got worse. I started to notice it started to spider a little, and then inevitably, with our cold temps here in Canada, and I threw on the defog or the defrost, and before you know it, snap. The whole thing cracked end to end. So I had to get a windshield replaced in this vehicle already, and if you're aware as to the current part situation and backlog with, auto manufacturers, it literally took almost a month and a half to get this windshield from Ford. Now, I did get the windshield, and when I got the windshield, before I had it put on, the glass place that I dealt with, amazing. So shout out to Novus Glass in Norfolk County, or Simcoe. They are amazing. Jen there, phenomenal. I was researching a product called Clearplex. Now, apparently this is really common amongst the Jeep guys. They use the Clearplex product, and think of Clearplex like a screen protector, but for your windshield. So there was very little information that I could find online regarding Clearplex. Between YouTube and even the manufacturer's website seemed pretty limited. However, from what I could find, the product seemed to be pretty promising in the sense that it was going to help eliminate the opportunity for these stones, when they hit the windshield, to actually chip it to the point where it'll create a large enough chip that could potentially crack. So we had that film applied to the windshield prior to having the windshield installed, and I will do a long-term review on this, and we'll do a more in-depth video at some point. However, so far so good. I am really liking the product. It seems to be holding up pretty good, and as a matter of fact, shortly after I left the glass place, I literally had a stone flick up, hit my windshield, and it bounced right off, and I see nothing, no marks, no anything. So far so good. Anyways, so that's number 5. If you're gonna get a Bronco, understand that part of the beauty of this very boxy vehicle is the fact that it's got a nearly vertical windshield, and it's more likely to get stone chips and cracks. Okay, moving on to number 4. Now, if you've heard it at all, and if you've done any reading online, you'll know that this hardtop, as great as it is, you can actually hear it, creaks. And it creaks quite a bit, and it's really weather dependent. So sometimes it creaks more so than others, and it hasn't really bothered me so much like it's doing it right now. I kind of gotten used to it, but when I am on a phone call with a client or whatever, sometimes people are like, what's that, all that noise in the background? And it's literally just that creaking. So there are apparently a couple of different fixes for it. I know Ford is really looking into it to see if they can address it in their manufacturing process as well. So I'm sure in time there will be, probably more fixes for it, and maybe even alternative roofs that you can put on the vehicle. But for the time being, you got to deal with this creaking. Is it an absolute deterrent? No. Would I go soft top? Not that a soft top is available for the two-door yet. No. I wouldn't trade the fact that I can pull these T-tops off and pull the roof off for not creaking. To me, it's definitely worth dealing with the creaking to have the versatility of these roofs coming off. So, that is number 4. All right, moving on to number 3. Now, number 3 is not necessarily specific with all of the models, but any of the models that doesn't have Sasquatch or the locking diffs. That's right. Now, when I bought this, I literally got lucky. I literally was so lucky to find this vehicle because most people are having to order these with a 6 to 9 month wait. Now, when you order them, you do get to order to the specification you want. And in retrospect, if I had ordered this, I certainly would have optioned this vehicle differently. However, I happened to get in luck with the sense that I kind of landed in the vehicle. It was an unaccounted for unit sitting in my dealer lot that I got lucky enough to call it mine. So I had to get it the way that it was. But that being said, I really wish that there was an option from Ford to upgrade non-Sasquatch models or non-locking diff models easily. Now, I know most of you are going to say, well, that's what the aftermarket is for. I agree. However, some of us would like dealer installed options. And I worked in automotive for a long time, and I know that there are certain options that you can just buy right from the dealer in a dealer accessory and have it installed. And everything that I've researched up to this point has basically said that if you want to upgrade this specifically to the locking diffs, it is quite labor intensive, especially if you want to go the OEM route. And I really wish that, because Ford had literally thought everything out with this vehicle, I wish that was one of the things that they thought out, where if, for instance, you're in my situation where you just kind of landed in the vehicle and you bought an in-stock unit and it didn't come equipped the way you wanted, or maybe you wanted to save money on purchase and you didn't really feel like, bumping up your monthly payment, but thought long-term you would inevitably upgrade or save for the upgrade. I wish there was a quick and easy option to upgrade this to, a Sasquatch package, or at least the locking diffs, a little more easily than the options available. Now, I get that it can be done, and like I said, through the aftermarket, it can easily be done eventually. But as it sits right now, it is a little more involved than just a matter of kind of swapping some easily, readily available parts. It is very mechanically involved from what I understand. So that, I would say, is not necessarily, anything to stop you from buying the vehicle, but certainly something to take into consideration when you're buying, that if you think at some point you're going to want those locking diffs, definitely spec it that way from the manufacturer. That way it's not only warranted, but it'll probably be more cost effective that way as well. And unlike myself, you're not going to live with what I like to call diff envy. So that is number 3. All right, number 2. Number 2 would definitely have to be the lack of flat floor in the 2-door model when the rear seats are folded down. I really wish that they were able to engineer this in such a way that when you fold those rear seats down, that the floor would basically become flush. Because as it sits right now, the 2-door in itself, it's roomy enough, but it would really, really enhance the overall space and utility of this vehicle if you were able to fold those seats completely flat. The trunk is okay, or the rear hatch area is okay for most day-to-day things, but when you're going to do that IKEA run, or maybe you're just going to do a parts run, buy a new set of wheels or something like that, I don't know. It would be really convenient and really helpful if those rear seats would just fold down flat and flush into the floor. Definitely something that I think would really help the overall utility of the vehicle, and again, the space and convenience of everything. So that's number 2. The rear seats, definitely could improve on those. Otherwise, there's a ton of room back there. I mean, for a 2-door, most people think that, oh, well, I'll get the 4-door. From a practicality standpoint, the 4-door makes sense if you're always putting passengers in the rear, and from like a convenience factor. However, if you're only occasionally putting people back there, these seats fold down, they slide forward, and it's not impossible to get back there. And believe it or not, when you're back there, there's a ton of room. So anyway, that's number 2. And finally, numero uno, my biggest complaint about this vehicle. Ford, I love you. I love this vehicle. But damn, the quality control is so bad. And maybe it's because, maybe some of you are watching this going, what are you talking about? That thing's amazing. Like, I've had 11 Ford products and it's pretty much the same. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe the problem is because I've owned so many Japanese and German vehicles that I'm already used to a different level of fit and finish that I am beginning to realize does not exist in a North American, and I shouldn't say all, but specifically in my Ford Bronco. I noticed little things upon taking delivery, and like as ownership time has gone on, I've started to notice a few more little things here and there. But overall, the fit and finish is okay. But if you've had any sort of Japanese vehicle, a Honda, Toyota, Subaru, or German vehicles, coming into this, it is going to become painfully obvious that there are some things you're like, how did you let that go? Like, how did the manufacturer, who was in charge of quality control that day, why was that even a thing? And I'll throw in some B-roll here so that you can see, but one of the things I noticed was, after taking delivery of the vehicle, I noticed my rear windshield fluid wasn't squirting. So I tried, wasn't squirting. Get out of the vehicle, I had my daughter hit the switch, and lo and behold, the front right, or passenger front wheel well was just soaked. So the pump is pumping out all the fluid, the washer fluid in that area. Took it to the dealer. Apparently a hose wasn't connected for the rear squirter. The hose wasn't connected, which I don't know how it even left the assembly line like that. But the other part of it too is that after I was kind of inspecting, when you get work done, sometimes you kind of look and see if like everything is kind of bolted back in its place. And maybe that's just me because I've got crazy OCD and I worked in the automotive business forever. But I was just kind of like poking around and having a look. I couldn't help but to notice, and I'll throw B-roll up now, the windshield washer fluid reservoir. When you stress plastic, it starts to go like white? Well, I noticed one of the tabs on the reservoir was stressed. It looked like it wasn't installed properly. So I made it a point of contacting the dealer and saying, hey, listen, I think when they reinstalled the reservoir, they didn't do it properly because it appears to be really stressed out on the tab. Or maybe there's a spacer or something missing in the rear. And the service manager was kind enough to look into it for me, and he got back to me and he said, well, first of all, the technician never removed the reservoir. And second of all, he inspected another dealer demo that they had there, and it was the exact same way. And then after doing some further investigating online, I noticed in some images that they are literally all that way. And it just looks like, why was it even engineered that way from the get-go? Like, why would you engineer something with tabs on either side that look like that there should be something, or a spacer, or a more narrow piece of metal it mounts against, and now it's like compressed and it's bowed, and anyways, I can't wrap my head around it, but that was one of the examples that I can think of. Another one is my rear hatch. When I went to go shut the glass, the cover popped off. The wiper motor cover popped off. And the little tabs that hold it into place, they're like barely even clipping in. So, again, a little gripe, nothing that's major, but from my experience working, especially at a Honda store for so many years and being fixed ops, and the service manager, if you had a Honda do that, if my customers had a Honda that did that, I would never hear the end of it. So again, a little thing, but I just found it kind of odd that seemed to be okay. And again, there are little things here and there that I find everywhere every now and again. I'm just like, okay, that's an afterthought, you know, like, for instance, the rear tailgate. There's a rubber plug that plugs the rear tailgate closest to the very end of the gate, or the handle on the very bottom. And the grommet doesn't quite fit right, and that's because there's a layered piece of metal within the tailgate itself. So this grommet is just like kind of partially sticking out. And I know it's a small thing and most people would never notice, but now you're going to all check your Bronco to verify. But this grommet should just plug into place, and it doesn't, because the little tabs on the inside of the grommet that hold it into the metal can't, because there's too many layers of metal in there. You would just think that they would come up with some sort of alternative instead of just some random off-the-shelf grommet, plug it in there and call it a day, and hope that it doesn't ever fall out. That's just like the little things. There's a piece of tape on the wiring loom that goes along the frame rail, and the tape is starting to unravel and it's hanging down. I had a client point it out to me. He was looking at my truck and he's like, man, that thing is beautiful. He's like, but there's something hanging down there. And lo and behold, it's like a piece of electrical tape that's kind of started to unravel. And I'm like looking underneath it and I'm like, come on guys, you know this is going to be exposed to the elements. Why not use something that's going to hold out a little bit better? Or maybe even use nylon ties. I don't know, anything. But again, at the end of the day, mechanically and functionally, this thing is in amazing condition. It drives and operates well. It's just those little things, you know, like those little details. And maybe I'm being picky in particular, or maybe, like I said, it's because I've owned other brand vehicles before, so I have this level of expectation of this, but I just think they can improve on it. Those are the top 5 things that I absolutely dislike or have a gripe with or wish would change. However, I still wouldn't trade it for anything else. I really enjoy this. I encourage you, if you are in the market and you're thinking about getting a truck or something a little more utility driven, I encourage you to try to get your hands on one of these and take it for a drive. It's a great vehicle. I really do love it. Alright guys, I've rambled on long enough. Thanks for watching. My next video will probably be the top 5 things I really love about this vehicle. As always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.